Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Ya na.
Just one request to all the devotees, if they can unmute themselves and also repeat after Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Na.
Na
Yavad.
Yavad
Etam.
Etam
Anubrin.
Anubhin
Narendra.
Narendra
Yavadetam Tanubrin Narendra.
Nayavadetam
Etam
Tanubhin
Tanubrin Narendra
Yavadetam Tanubrin Narendra.
Nayavadetam Tanubrin Narendra
Viduya
Vidhuya
Mayang
Mayam
Yam
Vayunodayena.
Vayunodayena
Viduya Mayam Vayunodayena.
Vidhuyamayam
Yam Vayunodayena
Viduya Mayam Vayunodayena.
Vidhuyamayam
Yavadetam Tanubrin Narendra.
Nayavadetam
Avadetam
Tanubhin Narendra
Narendra
Duyamayam Vayunodayena.
Vidhuyamayam Dayena
Mukta Sango.
Vimukta Sango
Ita.
Ita
Vita
Sat.
Shat
Sapatno.
Sapatno
Mukta Sango Jita Shat Sapatno.
Gojita Shat Sapatno
Mukta Sango Jita Shat Sapatno.
Vimukta
Vimuksango
Sango
Shat
Jita Shata
Sapatno
Sapatno
Vedatma.
Vedat
Vedatma
Tatvam
Tattvam
Pramatiha.
Dhamatiha
Avat.
Tavat
Avat
Vedatma Tatvam Brahmati Hatavat.
Vedat
Atma Tattvam
Avat
Avat
Vedatma Tatvam Brahmati Hatavat.
Vedat
Atatma Tattvam Tavat
Vimukta Sango Jita Shat Sapatno.
Muksango Jita Shat Sapatno
Matatvam Brahmati Hatavat.
Vedatma Tattvam Brahmati Tattvavat
Avat
Yavadetam Tanu Brindarendra.
Nayavadetam
Narendra
Vidhuyamayam Vayunodayena.
Vidhuyamayam
Mukta Sango Jita Shat Sapatno.
Vimukta Sango Jita Shat Sapatno
Sapatno
Vedatma Tatvam Brahmati Hatavat.
Vedat Brahmati
Brahmati
Avat
Hatavat
Okay, someone else like to try, please?
Nayavadetam Tanubhin Narendra
Tanubrin Narendra
Vidhuyamayam Vayuno Dayena
Vidhuyamayam Vayunodayena
Vimukta Sango Jita Shat Sapatno
Vimuksango Jitasattva
Vedatma Tattvam Brahmati Tavat
Nayavadetam Tanubrin Narendra
Nayavadetam
Tam
Tanubhin
Tanubrin
Narendra
Narendra Uyamayam Vayunodayena Mayam Vayunodayena Vimukta Sangojita Shat Sapatno
Vimukta Sango Jita Shat Sapatno
Vetatvatvam Brahmati Hatavat
Vedatma Tattvam Brahmati Tavat
Avat
Nayavadetam Tanubrin Narendra
Nayavadetam
Ayavadetam
Tanubhin
Tanubrin
Narendra
Narendra
Dhuyamayam Vayunodayena
Vidhuyamayam Vayuno Dayena
Vayunodayena
Mukta Sango Jita Sat Sapatno
Vimukta
Vimukta
Sango Jita
Sango
Shat Sapatno
No
वेदात्मतत्त्वं भ्रमतीह तावत्
वेदात्मतत्त्वं भ्रमतीह
भ्रमतीह तावत्
न यावदेतं तनुभृन्नरेन्द्र
न यावदेतां
यावदेतां तनुभृन्नरेन्द्र
यूयमायां वयुनो यदयेन
विधूय मायां वयुनोदयेन
विमुक्तसङ्गो जितसत्सपत्नो
विमुक्तसङ्गो जितषट्सपत्नो
वेदात्मतत्त्वं भ्रमतीत तावत्
वेदात्मतत्त्वं
वेदात्मतत्त्वं
भ्रमतीह तावत्
तावत्
नायावद् एतां तनुभृन्नरेन्द्र
न
देतां
यावदेतां
तनुभृन्नरेन्द्र
विधूय मायां वयुनोदयेन
विधूय
मायां वयुनोदयेन
विमुक्तसङ्गो जितषट्सपत्नो
विमुक्तसङ्गो जितषट्सपत्नो
वेदात्मतत्त्वं भ्रमतीह तावत्
वेदात्मतत्त्वं भ्रमतीह तावत्
न यावदेतां तनुभृन्नरेन्द्र
न
यावदेतां
यावदेतां
तनुभृन्नरेन्द्र
तनुभृन्नरेन्द्र
विधूय मायां वयुनोदयेन
विधूय मायां वयुनोदयेन
वयुनोदयेन
विमुक्तसङ्गो जितसत्सपत्नो
विमुक्तसङ्गो
विमुक्तसङ्गोजितसत्पत्नो
जितषट्सपत्नो
वेदात्मतत्त्वं भ्रमतीह तावत्
वेदात्मतत्त्वं
वेदात्मतत्त्वं
भ्रमतीह तावत्
न यावदेतां तनुभृष्णो नरेन्द्र
न
न यावदेतं तनुभृन्नरेन्द्र
यमायां वनुदोययेन
विधूयमायां वयुनोदयेन
मुक्तसङ्गो जितषट्सपत्नो
विमुक्तसङ्गो
विमुक्तसङ्गोजितसत्पत्नो
जितषट्सपत्नो
वेदात्मतत्त्वं भ्रमतीह तावत्
वेदात्मतत्त्वं भ्रमतीह
वेदात्मतत्त्वं
तावत्
Thank you. Thank you very much. Na,
न
not.
not
Yavat,
yavat
as long as.
as long as
Etam,
etam
this.
this
Anubrit,
tanubrit,
one who has accepted a material body.
one who has accepted a material body.
Narendra,
Narendra,
O king.
O king.
So this is like two words, Nara Indra, so it means the ruler of the Naras, or the controller of the Naras, which obviously means the king. So it's interesting how words are constructed in Sanskrit sometimes. Vidhuyamayam,
Vidhuyamayam,
washing away the infection accumulated because of contamination by the material world.
washing away the infection accumulated because of contamination by the material world.
This also is a very interesting word that is being used here by Jad Bharat. He talks about how the infection has been accumulated, and this has come about because of countless births in this material world, trying to lord it over the material nature, trying to be the control of material nature. And this just, when the jiva takes on this enjoying spirit or this controlling spirit, then it just becomes more and more covered by the influence of the material nature, where it comes to the point where the jiva doesn't even realize he's not the material body, but he's a servant of Krishna. It becomes so covered that he cannot see in the Bhagavatam, Pashanapi na Pashati. Even though they're seeing, they do not see. So even though they see the temporary nature of the body, even though they see the eternal nature of the self, even though they see all these things going on and how they're becoming covered over by the material nature, still they cannot see the reality that is right there in front of their very eyes. Vayuno
Vayunodayena
next word. By awakening of due to good association and study of the Vedic literature.
By awakening of transcendental knowledge due to good association and study of the Vedic literatures.
So here, another very important point that Jad Bharat is making to Rahugana is you have to awaken transcendental knowledge, and this comes about by good association. There's some lag or something, is there?
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji.
I think that's a bit weak here. Vimukta Sangha,
Vimukta Sangha,
free from all material association.
free from all material association.
Jita Shat Sapatna,
Jita Sapatnaha,
conquering the 6 enemies.
conquering the 6 enemies.
The 5 knowledge acquiring senses and the mind.
The 5 knowledge acquiring senses and the mind.
Veda
Veda
knows.
knows.
Atma Tattvam,
Atma Tattvam,
spiritual truth.
spiritual truth.
Brahmati,
Brahmati,
he wanders.
he wanders.
Iha,
Iha,
in this material world.
in this material world.
Tavat,
Tavat,
until that time.
until that time.
So it's really interesting the way this verse is structured. We see at the beginning, it's saying, not as long as this one who has accepted the material body, O king. And then at the end, he says he wanders in the material world until that time. So essentially what it's saying here is that until the point one accepts these different points, these 4 different points, 5 different points are being made here, then one will wander in this cycle of birth and death. And this seems, Prabhupada would sometimes use this phrase, since time immemorial, that one is wandering in this cycle of birth and death. Why? Because the jiva is trying to lord it over the material nature, trying to be the controller, trying to be the enjoyer. And as long as we have that disposition, as long as we have that tendency, we are going to be under the influence. Even it's kind of interesting because we think we are exploiting the material nature. We think we are controlling the material nature. Just like you hear sometimes from the scientists, man, the master of the universe. If a man is controlled by his senses, if he's controlled by his mind, he's master of nothing. He's actually dominated, he's controlled by the modes of material nature. And this is Krishna points this out all throughout the Gita. But he also mentions in the 7th chapter of the Gita, it says, this divine energy of mind, consisting of the 3 modes of material nature, very, very difficult, very difficult to overcome. But once overcome the influence of material nature is by surrendering to him. Here we see that Jad Bharat is describing the same thing. He's describing how to surrender Krishna. First off, we start by wash away the infection accumulated because of contamination by the material world. And we do this through the hearing and chanting process. Then he says, by awakening transcendental knowledge due to good association. I was making this to spiritual progress is to take good association. And as I was discussing last night down at Lower Hut, the point of association, or how we associate with devotees, is not through just some mundane manner, but we take up a spiritual practice, we take up a spiritual activity. We may give gifts, we may receive gifts, we may serve prasad, we may accept prasad, or we also may reveal our mind or inquire confidentially from the Vaishnava. And this is how we associate with one another. And through this process, just like when we receive gifts from devotees, and when we not like mundane gifts, we don't give like the latest Xbox or something like that. I don't really know what an Xbox. and in this way we become, and the association helps us to become purified. Yeah? And also Prabhupada is mentioning here the importance of study of the Vedic literatures through association and studying the Shastra in the association of Vaishnavas to hear from Vaishnavas is very, very important. And then Judd Bhatt goes on to talk about Vimukta Sangha, becoming freed from material association. Rupa Goswami, he lists this in the in the Upadeshamrita as one of the 6 things that can destroy devotional service and one of the 6 things that helps us to attain pure devotional service. This Asat Sangha Tyage Vaishnavachara Sri Sangha Ekha Sadhu Krishna. This Asat Sangha is very detrimental to one's progress in devotional life. So even though we may have relatives who are not devotees, we may know people who are not devotees, we don't just do it in a way that will help them to gradually develop their transcendental consciousness. Not that we just go and do the same things they do, go to the football with them or whatever it is they do. Because what will happen is if we do the same things with them, we'll become contaminated like them. And this is the power of association. If you associate with something long enough, you take on the qualities of whatever you're associating with. And when we do this with materialistic people, we'll become a materialistic person, unless we're very powerful and we're able to influence them. And then he talks about conquering the 6 enemies. And this is also quite interesting because in different places we see that there's different concepts given of the 6 enemies. Here Prabhupada is saying the 6 enemies means the 5 knowledge acquiring senses and the mind. And we see that in the Gita, Arjuna asks, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even it seems like it's unwilling, as if being driven by force. And then Krishna says, Kama esha, Krodha esha, Rajaguna samudbhava, Mahashana mahapapa, Vidinam hi havairanam. That he says, lust alone, Arjuna, which are born of. So, yeah, as long as the mind and the senses are influenced by the modes of material nature, especially by lust, then we find these things such as lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and envy are going to manifest. Sometimes Prabhupada translates it as intoxication and envy, or pride and envy. But we see that these things will manifest in the mind and the senses. And when the mind is controlled by lust, then the living entity gets involved in all sorts of unfortunate things in this material world. And really, it's this whole material world is driven by lust. And this is why Krishna says to Arjuna in the 3rd chapter of the Gita, that's the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Because as long as one's conquered by lust, then everything they do is just directed towards trying to enjoy the senses. And when we're conquered by this lust, we don't know Atma Tattva. And here it says Veda Atma Tattvam, but actually it says Aveda. They don't know Atma Tattvam if they are conquered by this lust. All right, I'll read Prabhupada's purport. His verse. My dear King Rahugana, as long as the conditioned soul accepts the material body and is not free from the contamination of material enjoyment, I'll just go here and I'll scroll this up so you can see it. Is not free from the contamination of material enjoyment. And as long as he does not conquer the 6 enemies and come to the platform of self-realization by awakening his spiritual knowledge, he has to wander among different places and different species of life in this material world. So Judd Bharat is explaining very clearly to Maharaj Rahugana the situation of every living entity in this material world. If they don't, if they accept the material body as a self and they're not free from the contamination of material enjoyment, everyone's doing that in this material world. You ask anyone who they are, and what do they say? They give you some understanding based on the body, that I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer. It's all based about the material body. How often do we experience that you'll ask someone who they are and they'll say, Ami Krishnana Nityadas. that I'm Krishna's eternal servant. We just don't have that experience in this material world. Why? Because they're convinced they're the body. They're functioning on this illusion that I'm the body, and they're trying to the best of their ability to enjoy the material senses, to exploit the material world. Krishna talks about this explains this to Arjuna also in the Gita, how that the living entity is trying to exploit the resources of this material nature. This is the situation of everyone in this material world. And as long as he does not conquer his six enemies, and most people you'll find don't even realize that the mind and senses influenced by lust are enemies. They think, well, these are my friends because they're helping me to enjoy this material world. But as I was saying before, they don't understand how it functions in this world. That, as long as you're trying to enjoy the material world, you'll become controlled by the material world. Yeah? And come to the platform of self-realization by awakening his spiritual knowledge, he has to wander among different places and different species of life in this material world. So wonderful translation here, wonderful translation Prabhupada's given. When one's mind is absorbed, this is Prabhupada's purport, when one's mind is absorbed in the material conception, he thinks that he belongs to a particular nation, family, country, or creed. These are all called upadhis, designations, and one has to become freed from them, sarvapati vinir muktam. As long as one is not freed, he has to continue conditioned life in material existence. The human form of life is meant for cleansing away these misconceptions. If this is not done, one has to repeat the cycle of birth and death and thus suffer all material conditioning. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we see here, Prabhupada is very clearly explaining the situation. If the mind is absorbed in material conception, because the mind, and Prabhupada points this out, he quotes some nice verses in the middle of the 6th chapter. He said, when the mind is engaged in Krishna's service, the mind is the best friend. But when the mind is engaged in material energy, the mind is the worst enemy. And this is what's being described here by Prabhupada, because the mind is absorbed in the material conception. Therefore, they think that I belong to this nation. I'm from New Zealand. I'm from Australia. I'm from India. I belong to a particular family. A country or a creed. And these are all, as Prabhupada's pointing out here, these are upadhi. Upadhi means a designation or a false designation. And he quotes this verse, Sarvapadi Vinir Muktam, Tat Padatwena Nimalam, Hrishikena Hrishikesha, Sevaram Bhakti Ruchate. Wonderful verse that's Rupa Goswami quotes from the Narad Pancharatra, which is also spoken in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And in this verse, we see that it's describing how one has to give up all these designations. And the way to give up these designations is through practicing devotional service by using our senses. It says Hrishikena, Hrishikesha. So Hrishikesha or Hrishikesha, Hrishika means the senses, and Isha means the Lord, the master. So the master of the senses is Krishna. And so if we use our senses to serve the master of the senses, then different things happen. First off, we have, or Prabhupada says there's two side effects. One is we become freed from all these material designations, these upadhis. These things are destroyed. This sarvapati, vinira muktam. Mukta means liberated. Vinira means destroyed. Yeah, and then we and it says tat paratwena nimala. Then our senses are purified, and we become restored to our original pure identity. This nimala means spotless. I mean, it means no contamination at all. So tat paratwena, we come restored to that original condition of no contamination from material nature. Yeah. And this is called devotional service. This is the actual position of the living entity. Yeah. So Prabhupada's really making it very clear for us that this is the way whereby we can become free from this. And the same point is being made here by Jad Bharat to Rahugana, is the way to wash away the infection accumulated because of contamination of the material nature is to awaken transcendental knowledge within the heart. Now, this is something that doesn't come from somewhere else. It's within the heart. As we see, it's also pointed out in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sarvakavanai Shravanadi Sutichiti Karaidai. This is kara uday, uday, it's awoken, it's brought up, So it's not coming from some other place. It's actually, this knowledge is there within the consciousness. The jiva actually has this knowledge, but because of this material conditioning, we're covered over. We don't understand who we are. We're completely, the covering is so amazing that you see that even though the jiva is getting knowledge, even though the jiva is coming to contact with transcendental persons, because of this ignorance, because of this attachment to enjoying the material nature, they cannot see. Pashanapi na pashyati. Even though they're seeing, they don't see. It's right in front of their face, and they don't see the reality. They become so covered over by it that they're just completely bewildered. And so the process of bhakti, the association of devotees, and hearing transcendental knowledge, it washes away this dust which has accumulated on the heart for millions of years, millions of births. And Lord Chaitanya, he talks about this is Cheto Dapara Majram Bhava Mahata Bhakti Vapa Shreya Kaira Vachandrika Vitaranam Vadvida. That this it's just Cheto Darpa. The Cheta means like a mirror, the heart, and Darpana means a mirror, and Marjana means to cleanse. Just like I think yesterday was Gundicha Marjana, and the whole idea with Gundicha Marjana is not only just to clean the temple, which is a very important aspect of it, but it's also to cleanse the heart. Because by engaging in the service of Krishna, as Narad Muni is pointing out in that verse, Rishikena Hrishikesha, then what happens is that this tat paratwena nimala is the heart becomes cleansed, the original identity becomes restored, and we give up all these different upadis. And also not only through taking good association, studying the scriptures, we actually start to develop we relish that association, and we also relish the study of the scriptures. And this is what's that verse? Vasudeva Kataruchi, by Shushusho Sharanasha Vasudeva Kataruchi, that by serving these great devotees, one actually develops an affinity for the messages of Vasudeva. You develop this taste for hearing about Krishna. And when that taste develops in the heart, one loses all attraction for material association. We lose the interest in associating with non-devotees. And as a result, we are able to conquer the enemies. And as Prabhupada's pointing out here, these knowledge acquiring senses and the mind, because the mind is directing the senses how to get enjoyment in this material world, how to improve my material situation, especially when the mind is influenced by lust, or particularly when the mind is influenced by lust, that is directing the senses how to enjoy this situation, how to enjoy that, And so when one takes the process of bhakti, then you come to understand the spiritual truth. So it's a very, very interesting verse and purport here. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also makes some interesting comments on this verse. He mentions that the knowledge that's being referred to here it comes in the form of absorbing the consciousness or thinking about the Lord, because this is actually the devotional process, is to become completely absorbed in thinking about Krishna, whether it's chanting the holy name, studying the scriptures, offering prayers to Krishna. I had a particularly bad night's sleep last night, and I'm just lying there in the bed in the middle of the night, and I'm just praying to Krishna, please protect me, please allow me to become your servant. Just to always be absorbed in thinking of Krishna. But because in this material world, we're not in that situation. We're completely covered by ignorance. Therefore, we perform sadhana, and by the performance of sadhana, it helps us to become freed from ignorance. Because sadhana, it directs the mind, it directs the senses towards serving Krishna, and in this condition of service of Krishna, then we become freed from this ignorance. So it's very, very important situation. So yeah, it's quite an interesting verse, and as basically it's saying that jiva will wander in this world until we become freed from material contamination until we conquer the 6 enemies and we become self-realized through spiritual knowledge. This is the essence of what this verse is saying. So that's our choice, you know. We can wander this material world for countless lifetimes. And Prabhupada would sometimes say, as I said before, since time immemorial, the jiva has been wandering in this situation. But if we take to this practice of devotional service, if we take good association, and if we study Srila Prabhupada's books, and then we also, take up the practice of sadhana bhakti and apply ourselves diligently to the practice of sadhana bhakti, we will conquer the 6 enemies, and we will become completely freed from this asat sangha, this material association, which is actually making our existence very, very difficult. You know? And what else we have? It was interesting, in the, as you know, the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is called Transcendental Knowledge. So we see there that from verse 34 through to the end, I'll just read those verses, just the translations. Krishna says to Arjuna, he says, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service done to him. Then this is the important point. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge to you because they have seen the truth. There's Jnananas Tattva Darshana. Because he's seeing the truth, he can give you the truth. Someone who doesn't see the truth can't give you the truth. And you'll see there's so many people in this material world. Just my son, he had a yoga school for about 10 or 11 years in Brisbane, and we regularly used to go and practice yoga there, my wife and myself. When the body gets older, you have to sort of do something to keep it going. And so we'd regularly go and do yoga. And the thing I found very interesting was, when my son was giving classes, he would just speak Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, and just, sort of coach it in or sort of couch it in sort of terms that the yogis are used to. But the other people, the other teachers, when they were giving yoga classes, they just had their own philosophy. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, what on earth is the benefit of listening to what you're saying? Because you don't understand the absolute truth. Therefore, all you're doing is bewildering people. So this is a really important point, is the self-realized soul, he can impart knowledge to you because he's seen the truth. There's Jnananas Tattva Darshana. Because Tattva Darshi, they're seeing, therefore they can give knowledge. Then Krishna continues, having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion, for by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. So Krishna is saying, through knowledge, transcendental knowledge, you understand the reality of the position of the jiva, that ultimately everything belongs to Krishna. Then he continues, even if you're considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you'll be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. So he's saying that even if you could perform the most abominable activities, if you take to this transcendental knowledge, if you understand this transcendental knowledge, you'll easily be able to cross over the difficult material world. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. So Krishna's giving a nice analogy. You'll see that, when you have a fire, and a strong, very strong burning fire, everything is reduced to ashes. There's nothing left. There's no sign of wood or anything else that's there. It's just all turned to ashes. And it says, so does the fire of knowledge, the blazing fire of knowledge, turn to ashes, the reactions to all material activities. Because in the past verse, he's saying, even if you consider the most sinful of all sinners, by taking the transcendental knowledge, it will destroy, by understanding, by imbibing transcendental knowledge, it will destroy the reaction to even the greatest of all sins. Yeah? And in this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. So through the practice of sadhana, through regularly studying the scriptures, through regularly associating with devotees, through regularly attending the morning program, chanting your rounds, following regular principles, then we see that the knowledge becomes manifest within ourselves in due course of time. It's not, my wife often says it's a process. It takes time. You just apply yourself to the process, you will achieve the goal as long as you stay on the path. It's just like, if I were to take a boat from here to Sydney, for instance, it would take quite some time. But as long as I stay on the boat, I'll get there. So it's the same in the path, in the process of devotional service. It does take time, based on our practice, based on our past conditioning, etc. It does take time, but if we stick with it, we'll get there without a doubt. And Krishna says so often, a sangsaya, without a doubt. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and subdues his senses is eligible to achieve knowledge, and having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. People in this world are in anxiety. People in this world are suffering because they are in ignorance. They do not understand. They don't understand what their supreme destination is. They think their supreme destination is to have a beautiful house in a place like Waiheke or some, whatever, desirable spot, where it's nice weather and beautiful views and all that sort of stuff, and to have a nice car in the garage, a Beamer and a Mercedes and all this sort of stuff, and maybe have a boat and have a beautiful wife and nice children who don't cause trouble and have a good job or be retired and have so much money in the bank. They think this is the aim of life. There was a song years ago by devotees that says, name, fame, glory. It's the same story. They get their name up in lights and they think it's the perfection of life. To become famous in this world, people think this is it. There's nothing better than this. To have all this, wealth, fame, glory, beautiful situation in this material world, this is everything. And as Prahlad Maharaj says, he says, Na te vidu svatakatim hi Vishnum. That they do not know. Swata, what was their own benefit? What's the greatest benefit of the living entity? Svatakatim hi Vishnum, the gati, the destination. Indeed, Vishnu. The supreme destination, the only destination, is the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But they've got no idea. Therefore, they're constantly in a source in anxiety. They're constantly in distress because they're after all these material. They have all these material aspirations which can never be fulfilled. And then Krishna continues. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. They fall down. For the doubting soul, there is neither happiness neither in this world nor in the next. They never become happy. They can't become happy because they don't know what the supreme destination is. They're just placing their faith in, as Prahlad Maharaj also says, in the fallible soldiers. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his actions, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, is situated factually in the self. Thus, he is not bound by the reactions of work or conquer of riches. And we see that Prabhupada is making the same point by quoting this verse, Sarvapati Vinirmuktam, because when you take to the devotional service of Krishna, you become situated factually in the self because you have no more false identification and all the impurities are removed. Therefore, and this is the concluding verse, therefore the doubts which have risen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. So this instruction is very relevant for us also because there's so many doubts in our heart, about, our situation in this material world, about the process of bhakti, about so many different things. But this has come because of ignorance. And what is that ignorance or avidya? That avidya means I think that I'm this body. This is the very essence of avidya. And as long as we think we're this body, we're going to be experiencing so much difficulty, so much distress, so much confusion and doubt within this material world. But through the association of devotees, through the study of scripture, as is being pointed out here by Jad Bharat Maharaj Rahugana, then this doubt can become destroyed, this ignorance becomes destroyed, and then we can actually come to our actual position of understanding who we are and also being able to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, I think that's all right. Any comments or questions on any of that? Yes, Kirti Vanta Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhamma pranams. Thank you again, Prabhuji, for a very nice class. Now, Prabhuji, at the beginning, you mentioned around a satsanga, and you said if you associate with certain people long enough, you start imbibing their qualities and things like that. One of the things I think a couple of days ago, so it's just a comment that you mentioned was that you said that we should learn to fish without getting wet.
Yeah.
Yes. Are you able to explain from that, considering that we are also required to associate with certain people to give them Krishna consciousness and things like that?
So Prabhupada, he would sometimes say this phrase. It's like he says, preaching in the material world is like learning the art of how to fish with catch a fish without getting wet. So what's the fish we're trying to catch? There's a main thing in this material world is we're trying to catch these jivas and bring them to Krishna consciousness. Yeah. And if you take their association, taking their association means, acting on the same level as they are. It means like doing the same activities they are, talking the same kind of stuff they do. You know what it's like when you talk with some of these non-devotees that I don't know what it's like here in New Zealand, but in Australia, some of them are so coarse. They swear, they the way they talk about women is very derogatory. The way they talk about so many things are very, very low class. So if you act like that, then you'll also become low class. So the idea is, and this is getting wet, in this analogy, this is the getting wet. So if you can learn how to interact with these people and give them Krishna consciousness, not take from them what they have, I mean, because what do they have to offer? I mean, maybe they can offer some Lakshmi to Krishna, maybe they can offer their time and energy to Krishna, but apart from that, what do they have which is of value? They don't have anything of value. So so that's the idea is how to interact with non-devotees in a way that's beneficial to them and is not going to be detrimental to you. This is learning the art of how to catch the fish without getting wet.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
No problems. Thank you. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I have got a question. Prabhu, you have talked a lot about association. So what about when we come to bhakti, we come to temple, then there are some devotees, maybe they don't have interest in listening to lectures. They have no interest in reading Bhagavatam. So how do we associate with such people? Because we always stress on devotee association.
Yeah.
So maybe they are on a different level. We are on a different level,
Yeah.
but we are all considered as devotees. So how do we handle that situation?
If I understand you correctly, you're explaining that when you come to the temple, you may not have so much association because you live a distance or whatever from the temple. But how do you get
No, we come to maybe we are a small community, and not everybody in that community has, maybe they are chanting, they are coming, doing seva, but may not have that may not like reading books, may not like attending lectures.
Yeah.
So the knowledge is a bit different between amongst the devotees. So
Yeah.
how do we deal with such situations? How do we
Rupa Goswami explains the progress of the process of bhakti, how you progress in the process. And he says, first it starts off, he says, adoshara, there's faith. And you'll see that when people start coming to the temple, there's faith. Tata sadhu, then you start to associate with devotees. Then anartha nivriti, you practice the process of devotional service where the anarthas are removed from the heart. So even though some may not have taste for studying the scriptures and stuff, through the process of anartha nivriti, the anarthas become removed through associating with devotees. And serving. This is the important thing, is to serve devotees. Then the taste for hearing about Krishna develops. So it's as I said before, it's a process. You start off, you have faith. Then you come and you come to the temple, you meet with devotees, you take prasadam with devotees, you hear devotees speak, you offer service to devotees, you offer service to the deities, the heart becomes purified. And as the heart becomes purified, then naturally this affinity for hearing the messages of Krishna or Vasudeva develop. So this is just by following the process, then naturally this will happen. So the best thing we can do is try to facilitate and encourage devotees new devotees to engage in the process of devotional service. And the word facilitate is a very interesting word. And I can't remember what the Latin is, but essentially the Latin means to make easy. So when we're facilitating a person's practice of devotional service, it means we make it easy for them. But the tendency is we make it hard for others by we give them all the different rules. Oh, you got to follow this rule, you got to follow that rule, and so many different rules. And Rupa Goswami says, first become Krishna conscious. The rules and regulations can follow later. So first, let's get people inspired in Krishna consciousness. First, let's get them chant the holy name and get them to take up the various practices of devotional service, to hear the holy name, to associate with devotees, to take prasadam. Get them offering prasadam at home, offering their bhoga at home. Have a picture altar at home, and they offer whatever they eat to Krishna. These things are going to help them become purified, help to cleanse the heart. And then what happens is, as the heart becomes cleansed more and more, they start to think, oh, I like this, I want to become more like these people. So they start to, what can I learn more about this? They want to follow the rules. They want to do this. They want to do that. But first we get them chanting, eating Krishna Prasad, associating with devotees, chanting and dancing in kirtan. Then you'll find that as we progress, or as a person progresses in devotional service, they want to learn more and more about how to improve their practice. Yeah, is that?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.